Hey, welcome to Overtime, where we take Sunday's message further in hopes that it is helpful for you and your life or your faith. And today we are going to be talking about the series we've been in the past couple weeks called Known for It. And if you haven't yet, just a general reminder to subscribe on YouTube. That just helps us make sure that this content gets in front of other people who it is helpful for as well. So we're going to be talking a little about what it means to be known and some barriers that we all have in what it means to be known. And so whether you've been in a community group at Northpoint before, whether you don't know what a community group is or you're brand new to church, I think today is going to help all of us center around what it means to be known more effectively in our life. So here we go. All right, so what I wanted to do to start off today was recognize that it has been a year now since we have had conversations around the UT Bama game. And I just loved to just invite Jen around this circle.
I don't think I was prepared for that depth of a conversation. And that was a bad day.
Yeah. It was a bad day for you?
Yeah.
I mean, most of it until the fourth quarter.
I mean, like, it was.
Oh, yeah.
It was,
yeah, that's
and
fair.
even at the end of it, it was still a bad day. Like, no, that should not have even gotten that way. Like, that should not have gone that way.
I mean, we basically won, not on the scoreboard, but we won.
Yeah.
And I think Alabama actually felt that way too. I think they felt like they basically lost.
I mean,
I know my husband was in mourning. He was like, "What just happened?"
You see, when that's happening, then you know we won.
Yeah.
Even though the scoreboard,
the assault the quarterback play that they had to do last time.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Man, all the texts that just like flooded into mainly him, because honestly, ultimately, I don't care. I'm like a supportive fan for my family, but like I actually don't care. So
okay. That just hurts our feelings that you don't care. And
No.
It was a hard day for us. We almost lost, but I don't care.
You know, Jen, you're going to care this year, though, aren't you?
Yep.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't feel like a sense of dread or worry.
You should.
We just needed to
when
come
the scoreboard.
to Tuscaloosa. That's where it is.
That's
right?
where it is this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just needed to go there to make sure it really stings. So
Yeah.
that's the plan this year.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Urban Meyer has lost at home in like 38 home games or something, so.
Saban?
Yeah.
Saban.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I recognize the fallacy in his sports quotation there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, yeah.
He said Urban Meyer, and it's definitely.
I said Nick.
Yeah, you said Urban Meyer, but it's okay.
Not even close to Nick Saban.
You're with company that understand here, so it's cool.
What do we understand? I did not understand that.
He said Urban Meyer. That's not the head coach of Alabama. Nick Saban's the head coach of Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So seasoned sports
You didn't.
people
Sorry.
understand those.
I think
kind
Texas
of
is still
Yeah.
dominating the all-time record against
Yeah,
them, too.
I was actually going to ask Jen if she knew
No, I don't know
what the
that
all-time.
stuff.
You don't what?
No, I like grew up around it. Like my grandfather had like Bear Bryant stuff all in his house, and like the whole houndstooth thing. Like everybody wears it, but like I don't like really care.
Well, for those that do
care.
care, and if there's any Bama fans listening, and for the Texas fans listening that need to be encouraged,
Okay. Yes.
in the last 25 years or so, I think it was just right around 1900 the first game was played, Texas has won 7. There's been 1 tie, and Alabama has won 2.
Okay.
And Texas has won every game where our starting quarterback finished the game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, where you guys
Good
didn't
stuff.
assault him in mid-game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Illegally.
feel like that's part of the game of football.
Assaulting them mid-game?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, there's just
Saban clearly has a play call, like whatever
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
it's just an interesting 10. We
Snipe
can
QB.
ask Adam. He was there.
In the first quarter every time.
Yeah.
I so don't like.
Well, we could ask Adam Ulatowski
I
because
feel like
he
you
was.
guys want me to be way more invested in
Yeah,
this
Adam was
portion
on
of
the
Adam is in your
conversation.
community group. He was on the field with Colt McCoy when that happened.
We should just call him on speakerphone.
Yeah, we
right
should
now.
talk to him.
Yeah.
And he'd probably be like, yeah, I saw Saban make the call.
Yeah. Get him.
This isn't
I feel like
going
this is
according
like
to plan. I can already see it not going well.
Yep.
Snipe the quarterback
This
now.
is like the
Yep.
Karate Kid moment where it's like
It was-
sweep the leg.
It was
Yeah.
literally right after Quinn last year was dicing up Nick Saban's secondary.
Yeah.
I mean, he made it look like a bunch of high school
That
football.
that one looked worse. I mean, obviously it was like the first drive with Colt, and it was a pretty normal looking play. But this one was like, Quinn was crushing them, and then it was like a late hit, and it looked bad.
Yep.
Is this like just? Cause I feel like sometimes here, as a part of the Northpoint community, it's like when college football season is here, it is everything.
Yep.
I certainly
No, this
I
is.
feel like we're
you're
off
from
to
the
a
South.
great start.
Yeah, you're
I am.
in Texas.
You
This
should
isn't
know
a
No,
North
I'm
thing.
Yeah.
I'm a part of the SEC. You'll feel that in a little bit.
Oh, my
But
I was gonna say,
But I don't care.
You're from Alabama.
So anyway,
Well,
Tennessee was a big deal when I was in high school, if that matters, because we had Peyton. That's how old I am, if that helps.
yeah. I'm a fan of Peyton.
We had a good, like, I would go to UT, Tennessee, Alabama games, and Alabama would lose. You know.
And now
when
we
I
have
was
a
in high
Manning.
school.
Now we have a Manning.
Now we have a Manning
That's
as well.
right. See,
To beat
See,
Alabama.
it shows.
Building bridges.
Okay. Building
Yeah.
bridges. Okay. Okay.
Hey,
Okay.
I just for the purposes of moving on, we'll check back in a
Okay.
couple weeks and we'll
Okay.
see how we're all doing emotionally in our relationship with one
I
another.
feel like I'll be okay.
I think the three of us might not be, so just be prepared for that. But I did want to ask a quick, just super fast icebreaker question,
Okay.
because Buck was vulnerable on stage a couple weeks ago, talking about Naked and Afraid, which I'm really glad you clarified second service that everything's blurred out. Because first service, I don't
Yeah.
think you said blurred out.
Well,
and so
again,
it's kind of
I'm
like,
just thinking, come
Yeah.
on.
yeah,
It's a discovery show.
yeah.
People
no,
don't
it's-
know that, though.
Really?
So Buck shared his, Naked and Afraid, which could be, guilty pleasure reality TV show. I'm curious to know for y'all too, and I'll share mine. What would be your guilty pleasure reality TV show?
So I felt like that was a moment where my husband and I connected with you because we do the Naked and Afraid.
Oh,
we either watch that.
Naked.
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 Is that what y'all Bama
Isn't that
fans
how I
say?
say it?
Naked.
Yeah, you said naked
Yes,
too.
I think this is, yeah.
Where'd you
the
pick that
other
up?
one, the
Watch
other
it on
one
your birthday.
I heard figure today.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's another
You got to figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out. All right. So what was yours? Naked and Afraid?
Or 90 Day Fiance, which is terrible.
Oh,
It's
man.
90 Day
so
Fiance.
bad. It's so bad, but it's so bad. It's like, I don't know, watching a
Yeah.
train wreck.
Yeah. Jordan,
Yours?
I think I know what yours is already. Maybe.
I am unaware. We just watched the Fury one, the Tyson
Fury.
Fury's.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a one season. It's not like a repeat.
I thought you were going to go with Bachelor.
I mean,
Oh, you watched The Bachelor?
And The Bachelorette, I think.
5
Wow.
or 6 years ago.
Oh, so
We
y'all
did.
haven't really watched since then? Okay.
I thought you were still in.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who would be the name of the last person that we.
Yeah.
It was
Even
a
knowing
while
any
ago.
names would be impressive.
Oh, man, now I got to go look at them.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely did. Like
Yeah.
in we started in college, and then probably like our first couple of years of marriage,
Yep.
we watched it.
All right.
When did the when did Chris Harrison get canceled? Whenever he got kicked off the show, it wasn't. I don't think why, but like it was around that time. Like
I don't
whenever he
know.
stopped being the host.
I never watched any of those.
It was like around 2020, I think.
Maybe we're already not watching then.
Yeah, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Hey, just course correction a little bit. That is not my show. I am saying I have watched the show in the past. It is not something and it was so intriguing. I was like, "What is going?" But then, like, it's
Yeah, that's totally
You
fair.
never watched it again?
No. I have seen like a snippet.
Like, is it the show, like, if you're flipping through the channels, do people even flip through channels anymore?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
And,
I'll
like,
flip.
That's where you.
I mean, I'll stay for like 3 or 4 minutes
yeah,
and be like, "Okay,
till the commercial.
yeah," like I've
Yeah.
seen, and then I move on.
Yeah.
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 Okay. That's good to clarify.
feel
Well,
like
just
that's-
I mean, I don't hang out like daily. Have my recording set on Naked and Afraid. I can tell you season 18, and then
You
Yeah.
don't know any names. I don't know any names either. Oh, you do know. Okay.
I don't know
if
if
you
I
know
know
a name,
names.
it's your show.
I don't know. I know a figure. Like,
Whoa.
Figure.
speaking of,
Sorry.
I'm like, oh, there's this face. I remember. Yeah, that's it.
There's face in a whole blurred
All right,
image that I'm.
Yeah.
Again, you watch it.
I'm
This
sorry.
Is not
I'm
a
sorry.
big deal.
I'm just
the
poking fun.
nakedness. It just.
So I will share mine boldly. But the Great British Baking Show.
No.
If you guys haven't watched that,
You did
No.
not say this.
yet 100%. It is so happy and positive. Like they just all like get along on the show, and you're like, man, I feel good when I watch that show. So Ashley and I got into it. So we like the Great
Like,
like a
British
baking
how
contest.
hard are you watching the show? Like, is
Nah,
it?
it's sometimes
Is there an
we're wa-
intensity behind it? Like,
Like-
hey, we every Tuesday night, man, we're glued.
No, it's like the finale we might be more glued, but other
Okay.
than that, it's like we put it on the background while we're like, making dinner and stuff or something
Okay.
like that. So
Do
But
you
it-
like speak to each other with a British accent the rest of the evening?
Well, like, so, I mean, we have like soggy bottom, you know, like we'll pick that up from the show and some of the things they say.
That's a food term?
Well, it's like when the pastry's like soggy on the bottom of
Oh,
it.
yeah,
So they
yeah.
literally
Okay.
say like soggy bottom. It's got a soggy bottom. Like, sorry, you know, you can't. So, but yeah, sorry.
Okay, I'm glad. Yep.
Somebody's listening who has watched
No,
it and
no.
is like, I get it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, if it's joyful and happy, I
Yeah.
like that. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I can feel the judgment coming from the naked and afraid man over there. So
Goodness. I tried to clarify.
I'm just kidding. I'm just
You
kidding.
don't watch joyful, happy shows.
Yeah.
No, I watch all depressing shows.
Yeah, I mean, literally call it
Every
afraid.
drama
Yeah,
Afraid.
shame or death
Yeah.
like has to be involved.
Yeah,
Really?
it's all.
Fear factor.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my boys are
UFC.
into what's the show? It's a
Milo.
Netflix show that's like there's the evil people, like the spirits. It's like the kids can see something like on the other side. Like there's I don't know.
I'm not
There's
familiar
like goblins or I don't even know what you would call them. Zombies maybe.
Wow.
The Walking Dead or
I don't know. Yeah, Jill and I walked in. We were on the porch last night, walked in, and I'm like, boys, what is this? There's this big red, like, evil thing, like, but it looks like all these strings, and this boy's bleeding through his nose, and he's reaching out his hand, and I'm like,
Is it
what?
Stranger
Stranger
Things?
Things?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you have not
Definitely
you
not
talked
a
about
reality
that
TV
show. Like
show.
it was like super foreign to you. Like you. That's like
I walked into it last night. And I'm
Last
like,
night,
boys, what are
yeah.
you watching?
That's-
And anyways, that seems
That's pretty
not the kind
mainstream.
of shows I'm into.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stranger Things
Okay.
is main.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
mainstream.
Number
Yeah,
one
yeah.
most watched last
Yeah.
year by a lot.
Yeah.
I know this.
It's a pretty big
Yeah.
deal.
right now.
all right. On topic.
This
there
is
we
a,
go.
yep. So we're going to move on
If anyone's still listening.
to a discussion about vulnerability and being known. And I want to start off because Buck and Jen, you guys both taught this series, and I'll just briefly share a little bit of what, you know, kind of the big ideas have been. Buck, in part one, you talked about the idea that we want to be known for something. And sometimes there's this gap between what we want to be known for and what we are known for, and oftentimes what we put in the gap doesn't help us close it, but what we can put in the gap is being known by somebody. And you talked about being exposed versus being encouraged and these different, you know, dynamics with that. And then Jen, you went kind of a layer further and just talked about, you know, if we are to be known by someone, we must learn what it looks like to be vulnerable. And, you know, that's where both our greatest hurts happen in our life, and it's also where our greatest healing happens is through vulnerability and kind of just all the different dynamics that go into that. And so I want to dive into a little bit of those a little bit further today, and then I also want to talk about community groups specifically, because our greatest hope for anybody at Northpoint is that you wouldn't just come and sit in a row, but that you would get in a circle. And there are different dynamics of community group that you will experience, and I want to speak to some of those just based on our own experiences here in hopes that it's just helpful for people. But first, let's go back to part one of the series a little bit, and I'll just ask this question. And there's a pushback. There's a little bit of a devil's advocate in me when I hear it. But why is being known by someone significant to being known for something we want to be known for? So my pushback is like there's lots of successful people who are successful in isolation, or they do so at the expense of others, or they become known what they want to be known for without being known by someone. So, you know, I'd say like why is that so significant? And maybe there's a flaw in that approach and thinking of those kind of people. What would you guys say?
Well, at first my mind was like, watch 30 for 30, you know, or something like that. Any kind of documentary. I mean, if so many successful people, so many people have made it to every pinnacle of everything you'd ever desire, everything you'd ever want, and listen to what they have to say. And especially not in the midst of, like, you know, like right now in UFC, there's a guy named, he just won the title, Sugar something. Sugar Sean O'Malley. So he's he's got the cool hair, you know, all this stuff. But he's in the midst of, and that's really hard to see because, man, you are riding the high. Your dopamine is off the charts. I mean, everything's euphoric, and you will ride that for a moment, and that's what's so, I think, difficult. But then I think there is that moment of sobriety in terms of sobriety of thought, sobriety of reality. Like all of a sudden I got everything I want, now what? And I think that's the moments that the 30 for 30s, you know, the documentaries where people go, the loneliest moments in my life is when I thought everything I thought would like deliver, and I realize it doesn't.
Yeah.
And that is because you're designed to be known.
Yeah.
And so that's what came to my mind initially is like, just watch life, be an observer of life, and be an observer of life a little bit more in the long game and not in the short, because the short, you can make a lot of bad assessments. But the long game, you get perspective and context, and you're like, oh, there's something to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. We've been talking about sports a little bit, and it just made me think of the documentaries that are coming right out right now about college football. So there's the Johnny Football one, if y'all have heard of that one or seen that one.
I've heard it's good. I haven't seen it.
But it's that idea. I mean, he just
Yeah.
talks about like getting drafted by the Browns and getting there. And then he was like, as soon as I got there, like I wanted to just implode and like do everything I can to fail so I can just get out of this environment. Like I think he used the word alone. Like I was lonely like multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
And he just, that's what he did. He did everything he could to like self-implode.
Well, that's in that documentary. I mean, that's a perfect example, because I think he said he was in Florida. He had the gun, pulled the trigger to kill himself.
Yeah.
Because he said, I had everything and I was utterly lonely.
Yeah.
So everything we're told that is going to deliver. And it did for a while. That's why I think he wrote it in college, initially, but then he got to a place that he had planned to kill himself. Like he had planned to go like, there's nothing that will satisfy. There's nothing that's going to, totally scratch the itch of meaning and purpose and something more significant. So that was his conclusion.
Yeah. And then in Urban Meyer, in the second one, if y'all have watched that, they win the national championship. And at the end of the episode, he's like, I've decided that like now I can take it easy. Like the pressure's off because I've won this thing. And so he said, I told my dad, pressure's off. Now I just get to do football for fun. And then the episode ends with him saying there's never been a more incorrect statement uttered by a human being, because he said the pressure just became so much more after he reached the pinnacle. And it didn't deliver exactly what he thought, it was going to deliver, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think the one we've used ad nauseum, I mean, we've used it a bunch, is the whole Tom Brady, but that just always floats in my mind.
Yeah. Or Jim Carrey, we've talked about that one before.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom Brady, where he just says, gosh, I just wish I knew, because the interviewer was going, you've won 3 Super Bowls. Is this it? Is this it? And he's like, no, there's got to be something more. There's got to be. And he's like, what is that something more? He's like, I just wish I knew.
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, we're talking about filling that hole inside of us. And there's an existential part of that God fills, but then there's a piece of that other people fill as well, right? And that's the whole idea of being known by someone. Would you guys add any other thoughts to what Buck is talking about?
I just think it's interesting to think about like that you can be known for something in a like a one-way relationship. Like, so zero connection can take place and you can be known for something. Like I always get when, if there's a Sunday message and we're talking about like knowing about Jesus versus knowing Jesus, and I'll be like, LeBron James, I can list so many facts and stats, and I was born in Cleveland and his kids' names and his salary. And, I've read a biography about him and all this stuff. And I have zero relationship with LeBron James. He like does not know that I exist. There's no like exchange of connection there, the back and forth of ideas and presence and energy and comfort. And so like to be known for something, it doesn't have any correlation with like, is there any type of connection or relationship that actually exists? So that's part of the reason I think you can be known by a lot of people and be incredibly lonely. So,
well, it's where you experience love. I mean, like by definition, and the love is the supreme ethic. Like, where do you genuinely feel that, experience it in the deepest parts of your soul? It can only be when you're truly, like, true love. We've talked about this before, but is that whole idea to go like, I see you, I see all of your good, I see all of your bad, and I accept you unconditionally. Like, it's that kind of concept to feel true love. It's not in the absence of judgment, it's in full judgment. I see all of you and I accept you. And so like, for a person can all the kind of external things, but then to genuinely experience love, which is the greatest thing in the world. There's nothing better. And you can't do that outside of a relationship, outside of truly being known. And you may, get some surface elements of that, or you may get some anecdotes of that, but truly to experience it at its core, at its, the essence of love, it's only in relationship.
Yeah. Anything you'd add, Jen?
I'm listening and love all the sports talk. Super connecting with that. No, but I mean, I'm just thinking about how trust and choice are just such a big part of the depth of being known, right? Like, and so in my mind, the more successful you are in any, really, I feel like in almost any vein, like you like those things seem to be diminished, right? Like, who can I trust? And are they choosing me, or am I writing them a paycheck? Are they choosing me, or are they riding on my coattails? Like, and so like to know that someone just chooses you and that you can trust that, and you have spaces where you're not questioning those relationships. I think that, to me, like, it just, that's the depth of that being known. And when you watch documentaries for any level of success, you know, people, that's part of what they're missing, right? I didn't have anybody to trust as I walked down that road. Didn't have anybody to trust that they were with me because they chose me versus some other agenda. And then I'm just thinking about how our culture is so interesting in what you're known for now, which is very different than when I was growing up. Like, when I was growing up, I felt like you were famous for actual things like skills, talents, abilities. And I feel like now you can go viral for like no reason. Like, it's the weirdest thing when we step back and think about it. I'm like, so even thinking about, like, you know, all the LeBron stuff, like, what about these influencers that there's not even a stat to attach, minus like a follower kind of thing. So I'm wondering how that kind of plays in their own world, right? So then I guess it becomes based on image. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think what you're alluding to and what you were saying earlier, it can be your prison, because the more you accomplish, the more success, the more like, hey, notoriety on YouTube, or notoriety because you're low. You have to maintain that image. Like, you have to maintain. And so, like, even what I was talking about in part one, the temptation to pretend, the temptation to kind of masquerade, the temptation to, you know, say, hey, everything's fine, the temptation to even lie, the temptation to say it's everybody else's fault because don't you know who I am, what I've accomplished, look at my bank account, look at my titles, look at like how famous I am. And then the reality is, when all the noise quiets down, then no one knows you, because you're managing an image, you're pretending. And that, I think, for people who are famous, people who are really successful, that is a slippery slope, and so many have experienced it, and it's really, really tough.
I even think people just with influence, like leaders of any capacity, have to maintain some sort of image or some sort of face, and that can be very isolating. That can be the prison, you know, even without some sort of social media following or something.
And as you alluded to, this is where, like, being known by a few. I mean, you don't need to, like, you can't be known by but this is the idea, and especially, like, I've joked about this being a pastor. I mean, in the hypocrisy in the religious community is, like, I mean, that's kind of the brunt of the jokes. You know, as you go to work, as you're in school, I mean, when you bring up church, there's some sort of hypocrisy that's probably a story of hypocrisy. And I get it, because the expectation as a pastor, the expectation as religious leaders, you better be perfect. And we know you're not, but you better be. We know you're not, but you better be. Your marriage better be. We know you're not perfect. You know, it's like, and I get it, because you stand up there with authority and you're telling people how to live their lives. And you're really trying to do that through the scriptures and through Jesus, and saying, hey, I'm trying to live this with you. But still, there's that moral authority to maintain that in the church. There is that sense of, like, I have to maintain this image. And if you slip up at all, there's the...
I mean, we've all seen it. You get the hell beat out of you.
Yeah, that, or, you know, the temptation as the leader of whatever, you know, religious community is to pretend.
Yeah.
Is to say, you know, to not be honest. And that's why, you know, being known by a few, having a few people that just truly love you, that in the presence of judgment, they judge you big. But in the midst of all their judgment, they go, man, I love you. I see you and I accept you. That's super powerful.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the other things that makes it difficult for us to experience this type of being known and those people who love us is just not understanding maybe what we're carrying into different relationships where there's a capacity to be known and we're not allowing ourselves. And Jen, we had talked about this ahead of time of your message, but you had these different attachment styles that you'd broken down. And we kind of develop a certain attachment style as we go through life. And then those can either benefit us or hurt us when it comes to trying to connect with other people. Can you talk through those just a little bit?
Through the styles?
Yeah. And just how it's applicable to this conversation.
Yeah, I think that I would explain them as kind of like a dance or a rhythm that we develop. And some people think we develop really, really young, right? And then some people think it just evolves over time. But it's kind of like we get these set points. Like, this is the distance between me and so. And so I just kind of live in that space. And so if so-and-so steps closer to me, then I might react because my body and even just everything is used to, my psyche is used to kind of being at this set point. And so we all kind of come into relationships at different points, right, and used to a different distance. So I think that Bowlesby and Ainsworth, John Bowlesby and Mary Ainsworth, started really this conversation in the 1960s. And then we've kind of it's evolved over time, where there were basically 4 quadrants, right? And it can kind of be broken into 2 categories at first. it's kind of like there are people that step toward relationship and there are people that step away, but for different reasons and in different ways.
Right.
So stepping away out of fear or stepping away out of dismissive. So that would be like avoidant fearful, avoidant dismissive would be, I wish I could draw it. I'm like drawing it with my hand in my mind. Or you go over here to this space, which is like just anxious. You're stepping into relationships, but it's with a lot of anxiety. Maybe even relationships become a part of your identity in some sense. And then you step into like this secure space too. And I think that, I keep thinking we talked about this Sunday, but we didn't. Like the goal would be to be in a secure space. But that requires this fluidness that I think we have a hard time with in relationships, right? Because of the things with fear, anxiety, so much more than that, right? That kind of feed the distance that we keep between people. So secure looks like I'm able to articulate my emotions and have direct conversation, like not necessarily confrontation. And then you'd have, or it might look, but all with this flexibility that kind of remained at the same time. And it's so funny because I know this is super cheesy, but we're church, but like, I really, like Jesus just embodies this secure stance when you see him engage with people. Because there's this ability to step toward people regardless of if they're the religious elite or a politician of the time or, a leper or a woman that's caught in the act of it. He's constantly stepping toward relationship, but with this flexibility and remaining him at the same time. So I think when you don't recognize how you show up, like you don't know why you've been dismissive of relationships, why you are, or anxiety is kind of a big part of your relational stance or your style and how you approach people. You're going to show up on autopilot like that. So you'll bring a lot of that stuff into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think the goal would be to moving towards secure, but you have to first understand, man, that's why I'm really fearful in this space. I have a lot of anxiety. I have a low self-esteem. I attach a lot of my worth and my value to how people are responding to me.
Yeah.
And so knowing kind of like the dance that you do when you show up, you're doing it anyway. You're being in one of these positions and one of these attachment styles no matter what. So knowing which one you start with and seeing what can I do to move more towards secure would be helpful.
Yeah.
It's so much better to draw it, by the way.
Sure. It's definitely like
it's a visual thing.
Yeah.
You can see.
Yeah. And most people could Google attachment styles and they could find
Google
pretty
image
good.
search attachment styles. And you could even like do it in like your specific context in a marriage. Like you can break it down into your different relational dynamics. But I think the key is like, if it's true that because of our experiences or how we were raised or all the above, that we enter almost all relationships in a certain manner, in a certain posture, wouldn't you want to know how you're showing up?
Yeah.
So the more that you understand how you're showing up, the more free you are to adapt that or to change it, and to move more, like to release certain things or to pick up other things that you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because I think most people, I think about just things I've heard or read in terms of sociology and thinking about the breakdown of the nuclear family, a much more individualistic society today. Most people, I think, are walking around with the negative attachment style. And they haven't unlearned the negative attachment style that they got in their family of origin or experiences growing up and relearned a different set of attachment style. So it's contributing to the overall just amount of loneliness that we see in the world today, is that people don't know how to unlearn these other styles and relearn what it looks like to connect with people. So you can tell them you're lonely, make friends, and they struggle to figure out what that looks like because they don't know how to attach in different, more healthy ways.
I even think that statement is really good. Some of us don't know how to make friends.
Mm-hmm.
We either live in fear that we're doing it wrong or we are dismissive and we don't need them. And I think I think it's super real in Western culture.
Yeah.
It's a real big part because, I think the goal would be to be an I, like a me, myself, in the midst of we. But different cultures, probably some Eastern cultures are much more a we. Like it's all about the we, the collective. It is what we communally think and feel. In American culture, some Western cultures are very much like it is what I think and what I feel, when it's actually supposed to be both. We're designed for it to be both at the same time. And so figuring out how to navigate that space to be like, I am my own person. And again, super cheesy, but Jesus does this beautifully. It's such a beautiful example of like being in his own space. He just feels, when you read the accounts of his words and of his interactions with people, it's just like he just feels like he's super comfortable in his own skin, but there for the collective as well.
Yeah. Yeah. When both of you guys said this in your message, you talked about this idea of you both hurt at the deepest level of community and you're healed at the deepest level of community. I think alluding to many people walking around not knowing what it looks like to make friends or not knowing what it looks like to have a healthy attachment style with people. Perhaps this podcast is illuminating that for somebody and they're becoming more self-aware. Oh, I need to relearn what that looks like. What would you say to someone who has just experienced the hurt, but they've not yet experienced the healing? Like, how would you encourage them to take steps towards that healing, towards developing better attachment styles with people?
Just go and, I don't know. It's like, I think I'd probably just tell my story. I just tell them a little bit, just like, because I don't, it's so hard. It's like, do they want to, or do they want to like grow in that? Do they want to, be known? Do they, it's hard to say like, hey, here's what you need. I would just probably tell them about like, the fact that, for me, like I was lonely for a significant portion of my life, most of my life. And as a result of, I was hurt by the one who was supposed to nurture my soul, which was my mother. And, when I tried to be vulnerable, when I tried to share, some things at school, when I tried to share my fears, when I tried to share like, things about my dad, when I tried to share things about, a friend that hurt me or whatever it may be. Or I remember one time, a friend of mine got hit by a car, and I was like, I so desperately wanted to like bring him like a gift or something like this. And I was in my most vulnerable moments, in my most like, my soul is wide open to you. It was, her famous line was, suck it up. Just suck it up, Buck. I mean, life is not that bad for you. Just suck it up. And there's nothing more painful as a 7-year-old, as a 10-year-old, like honestly, than when you expose your soul, like the deepest parts of you, the most sacred pieces of you, to go like, hey, I am going to release what's inside the vault of my soul to you. Do you see it? Would you accept it? Would you help me with this? And that's a mom's role. Like primarily, that's her ability to nurture those moments. And my mom just crushed that. So for me, I was hurt and wounded at the deepest levels by those who were closest. That would be my mom. And so I just made an unconscious vow when I was young, I will never feel again. I will never feel again. And for years and years and years and years, on the other side of Jill, other side of my boys, other side of friends, I would be like, yeah, and I could be fun and people could kind of, but they never really knew me. And they didn't know me because I wouldn't share the real me with other people. And that was my MO. Like, hey, Buck can be fun, and he can be like, hey, great, and he can give some good advice. But, man, I just don't think I know him. It's really hard to get to know him. And I still struggle with that today. But it was that, it was the moment when my mom passed away that began to open up some really deep wounds inside of me. And I sat down with somebody, and they were, what we were joking about before the podcast, is this idea to go, Buck, a man, to be a man who's fully alive, you have to feel. The only people who don't feel are in the morgue. And I was like, what? And then, like you alluded to, Jen, my counselor began to teach me, like, Buck, like, it's okay to say, I just feel really scared right now. I just feel really nervous. I just feel like I'm not going to be enough in this moment. And I'm like, you can say that and not get like, feel like weak. And so, it's great because she began to like coach me, begin to teach me, to show me like, hey, I remember one time in a conversation, she said, I don't really think you like Jesus. I was like, I'm a preacher. I love him. And she was like, nah, I don't think you like him because like he's too emotional for you. And so she was talking about in the temple when he's, flipping tables, or, when Lazarus is, and like he is full blown tearing up. Like he is weeping, and it's like, oh, get control of yourself. That's the voice I had inside of me. So she's like, I don't think you like, but she taught me and really helped me go, there's places to be very vulnerable with your soul, and it's with that trusted, known relationships. And that today has allowed me to deepen my relationship with Jill, deepen my relationship with my boys, deepen my relationship with friends. And that was my story. And I feel far more alive than I've ever felt, far more joy than I've ever felt in my life, far more meaning. I feel loved in a way, in the deepest parts of who I am, in a way I've never felt in my life. And that was a result of being willing to deal with the deepest wounds that came from the closest relationship in my life. So I would just tell the story and say, like, so what do you think? What do you feel about that?
Yeah.
It's so fun to hear you because I feel the opposite. I mean,
Yeah.
because I love that. So I was raised in a different way where everything was emotional and everything was felt and everything was personal. Right? So it was like
That's why you're sarcastic.
I am. So it was like everything, if I came home with an issue from school, it was like, oh, they shouldn't have done that to you. And, so everything felt done to me, and also watching a lot of people in my family kind of interact with each other in that way. So I didn't hear suck it up. I heard like poor baby. That had to be hard. Then you compound that with being an only child. So it's like everything was in my head. So my process has been more like, well, they're not doing that to me. Like even like parenting, like when I felt like God was like, do you think your sons are like doing this at you? Like they're being 4 years old at you. Like they're trying to get you. And so it was almost like where you needed to step in toward those emotions. I needed to like almost not detach, because I think that's not the goal. I don't think to disconnect completely, but almost like, wow, maybe they have something else going on that I don't know. Like I don't know all the things. I can't control really much of anything, and it's not that personal. Like, and so I think that's an opposite spectrum for that, because everything you were saying, I agreed with everything you said. Like, yes, some people, and I'm thinking, but man, I had a lot of that. I just didn't, I needed to suck it up sometimes. And so, I mean, I needed someone to look at me and be like, stop. That's not about you. Stop making everything about you. Stop making how this is or isn't working about you. And so, which I think, again, like God uniquely makes us and knows that about us, and knows where, hey, you were withdrawn or told to suck it up. And it's like, hey, Jen, like, just suck it up. Like sometimes I do need to do that, because I think I over-attach to my emotions. And so I grew up then responding to that, and I will tell you anything and everything. But that's just a defense mechanism. So, because all I can think of is if I go ahead and air all that out now, you have nothing to come at me with later. So it's just an opposite. Instead of hiding, it's like I bear it all, so you have no ammunition.
Yeah.
My kids actually call it 8 miling, like Eminem's movie. At the very end in the rap battle, like he just gives all the bad things that the guy could actually come at him with, and there's nothing for the other rapper to say. So my kids will constantly call me out. They're like, you're 8 miling yourself. You're 8 miling yourself. You're 8 miling yourself. Because that's my response to like over-identifying with the things that would happen to me.
Yep.
That's not, I mean, again, I don't want to sound like I'm negating your stuff. I just think it's just a different journey. Sure.
It's a new lens. That was fantastic. And I learned the 8 miling term.
Yep.
Which I like. I feel like I can use that.
You can 8 mile.
Yeah.
We will do a rap battle, and you can just throw out, be super vulnerable, and then no one has anything to come back with.
I like it.
I would love to watch you do a rap battle.
Oh, yeah, I saw Buck's eyes light up a little bit when you said rap battle.
Rap battle?
Yeah.
I'd love to rap.
Yep. All right, Jordan, your turn to share your whole life story on the podcast.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, my answer would be I'd share Buck's story.
Yeah. 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 That's it. I mean, I think it's what I took away listening. I I am the youngest around the table. And I like
By a
to,
lot.
I like to point
you're
that out
a
a lot.
child.
And I would say there's like a lot of things I'm discovering now about, different styles that I learned growing up, and things that, even we're bumping into, in our marriage and having kids and all that it just brings to light all this stuff. And you're like, oh, I didn't know that was there. And it just seems like on the other side of both of you, there's this self-awareness to understand the way you were taught inadvertently, right, wrong, or indifferent to relate, and how you had to unlearn / relearn the way to attach. And it's why the attachment styles piece is just helpful to know, like, we all have a style. And sometimes that is helping us in community and being known, and sometimes that is hurting us in the way in which we are known. And we're going to bring that into community groups and any environment we jump into where we want to relate with other people, right? So I think that's helpful. I want to hone in on the rest of our time talking specifically about community groups. There's no specific, verse that I know of that is, and so you shall be in groups of people, and you're going to meet on Wednesday nights for 2 hours and do these studies and all that kind of stuff. But in our context, both culturally and just church, it's one of the best vehicles we know to help people experience the very type of being known that, helps them grow in their faith and improve as people and all that kind of stuff. And so groups are our greatest hope for people. But I want to know from a more zooming out perspective, and hopefully this question makes sense, why do you think that is? Why is the idea of a group intentionally on a regular basis the thing in which we're to be known, get in this environment?
We're all looking at Jordan.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just waiting for your answer.
Oh, I can roll with it. Well, I think it's, it's funny for me just getting out of my 20s, which I know you're still in.
Yeah.
So I can reflect on them.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then when you're my age.
I want to
it's-
learn a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tim, do we ever do this?
Wow.
I just look at you as a peer, someone
Yes,
I
well, I mean,
highly respect.
Because
This
we're
is why I
actually pretty
ask all
close
the-
to the same age. so
This is
that's
why I
good.
ask all the questions, because like there's just so much wisdom
Wait,
around this
do you
table
guys
for me
have
to
what-
learn from.
Do you have like what? Are you 2 years difference?
1 year.
One
we,
year.
we were the same grade in school,
Oh
but
my
we are
gosh, okay,
biologically.
I'm in my 20s. He's in his 30s.
Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna ride that
What's
for
our
the
age
next
gap?
10 months.
What's our age gap?
I have no idea. How old are you?
43.
47.
Okay.
Anyways, so I think one of the things like I was least prepared for in your 20s is like how lonely your 20s can be, and then that can just continue for the rest of your life. But I think when you think I had a pretty good high school experience, so I would throw in that caveat, like we had a good group of high school friends and so on. But I was even thinking about your challenge of like staying in community, like in your elementary, middle, high school years, you are forced to be around on a regular basis people that you would not choose. Like you don't choose your class, you don't choose your team, you don't and so there's a range of, personalities and backgrounds and stories and so on, but then you're rubbing shoulders with them every single day and you're forming these relationships over time, going through common struggles together, learning together. And then you go off to college, and some people find incredible community in college and some lifelong friends, but college is a lot for a lot of people like that first one of I didn't know how lonely this could be because I see on social media this is gonna be the time of my life and so on. And in reality, people have just moved here from all over the place and don't know where their like spot is or how to connect and so on. And so you have to make some intentional decisions like already in college, like I'm gonna join this group or this fraternity or sorority or organization or whatever it might be. Roommates can be that if you find great roommates. Then you graduate college and people go take a job all over around the U.S. and you don't have kids yet, and you're not bonding with parents through common activities in school and whatever. And so your just natural rhythm of life in our culture in particular, in the U.S. Of being in proximity, struggling with people, doing significant things together, can become almost truly non-existent very quickly in a very short time span. And then I think you're able to throughout, every stage from there kind of continue that pace, that normalcy of kind of superficial relationships. I might know a couple neighbors, there's the people that I work with, but even that, a lot of times is maybe not the group to go all the way 0 to 100 with,
Except for if you work here. If you work here, it's totally fine.
Yes, there's some unique church things too, but I think it's that anything then important now, I have to prioritize, I have to schedule, I have to whether it's a gym or a diet or learning or and time with your children or your spouse or whatever it is. It's if I'm going to be known, if I see the value in community, there has to be something where it's on the calendar, it's scheduled, this is the purpose of this, I'm going in open-minded, and it's just not something that's going to, for most people, happen on accident. You're just not going to accidentally walk into these great, meaningful relationships that we described over the course of the series. So I think that's why I see that vehicle. Some of it is even cultural, but then there's timeless principles about prioritizing those relationships that community groups seem to fill for so many.
Yeah. Well, really interesting. I don't know if I shared this on the podcast last time or I shared it in a meeting. I can't remember. But I think there is a big cultural component in just how our society has changed in the last 100 years and how much more individualistic it is, how easy it is to pick everything up and move across the country away from all the people and have to start over fresh. Even going to college with the edges, all of this looks so different. And there's a stat that said and part of this is, again, the breakdown of the nuclear family. There's a stat that said the median American home in 1950 was 983 square feet. And then in 2018, it's 2,436 square feet. And so there's literally in our households more distance between us as individuals, as people. And I think just as a whole, much more individualistic approach to life. And I'm going to do what I want to do, self-discovery. I need to go find who I am. And that comes at the expense of everything else because that's my identity and how it's all roped up. And I think this leads to a much more potentially lonely lifestyle. And that's why things like community groups need to exist, because it's People need to re-find a family to belong to. And that's why I think so many people, we hear stories of people say like, I found a family. I didn't find a group of people. I found a family to do life with. And, you know, for people who don't live near their families, or their families are broken, or there's divorce or hardship, whatever, people find like a family to experience with. And even Jesus, you know, saying, there's a lot more we could pull on this, but like saying you're going to leave your father, you're going to leave your mother, like all, and you're going to, these are the people now you're going to do life with, like with the disciples. And the way he approached that and did that was almost like, here's your new family. These are your new brothers and sisters. And it's not at the expense of, and people can go radical with that and start cults and stuff and all that kind of stuff. But we don't want to do that. But there is a dynamic of being a follower of Jesus. You gain a whole new family of people to be known by, you know. I think it's powerful.
Yeah, and I think a very practical thing, and this is just one sliver, is just, you know, I say quite a bit that we get stuck in life. And when you get stuck in your marriage, stuck in your job, stuck in just meaning and purpose, stuck in just maybe even, you know, spiritually, whatever it is, sometimes you need new information. And to Jordan's point, that it doesn't happen by accident. It's not like, one day woke up and, you know, every now and then you hear those, but those are like lottery odd kind of stories. But if you're intentional, there's a lot of times you're in a community group or you're with people and they're talking about their marriage and they're like, and you feel alone when you're stuck and you hear them talk about their marriage and you go, there's a Me Too moment. Like they get what I'm going through. And then they talk about how they've gotten unstuck and you're like, that makes so much sense. Or in parenting, or if you're single and you feel like, man, am I ever going to get married if you want to? Or if you're in a job and you're stuck, whatever it is. Or like with Jesus, man, I've always had this question, like, or what about the God of the Old Testament? What about the God of the New Testament? I mean, and you're in this intentional community and all of a sudden somebody goes, man, I've had that question for a long time. And then they begin to explain like what happened, what was their breakthrough? And you've been stuck, but now you have new information, and that came through intentional community. So it's just one aspect, but I love that about you could have all the information in the world, you could have all the inspiration. Man, I want to have a great marriage, or I want to get healthy, or I want to understand who God is, you know. But you know, oftentimes you need that connection, is to help you take that next step.
Yeah, that's great. For a lot of people with community groups, they have pushbacks, and I want to end with this, and I just want to hear you guys like more like fast. You know, what would you say to people who say this? I think a lot of people say, I don't have time for it. People say, I've got past church hurt. I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt again, or I'm bringing in wounds to this. It's just weird. Like people, when they picture a community group, they probably picture something like, if you don't have a church context, you're thinking kumbaya, you're thinking singing songs, holding hands, stuff.
That's all that we do in my community group.
Oh, that is? Okay,
that is her group.
That is actually, it's titled that, Hands and Kumbaya.
Nice. She's kidding,
It's
for
already
people
full.
who don't know.
It's already full, sorry.
Yeah. Or just like, man, I tried that thing, it didn't gel, it didn't work, so I'm just, I'm not going to try that again, that doesn't work. How would you experience these? What would you say to people who have these kind of pushbacks?
And you want this popcorn style? Because I feel like I've heard all those, right? I think those are pretty.
Well, that's why I want to ask you guys, because you've all been in positions to hear like, and you've answered these in conversations. So I'm curious to know what you guys say, or if there's a big one I missed too.
Well, I mean, we can go in order. The don't have time is there's a person. I should have probably more empathy for the statement than I do, because I do realize like there are people with incredible demands on their life. But we all have the same amount of time, so like we choose what we allot, the most important things to. And so I always like struggle with that one. I like sharing about Mark in my CG right now, who's a principal in LISD, and like Thursday nights are like huge in schools. There's games, there's everywhere he's supposed to be, and concerts, and he's just told like his entire staff, the district knows, he's like, hey, Thursday nights are my community group, so like I don't show up to events, like awesome. Don't schedule meetings, I like don't all that kind of stuff. And
which a lot of people don't give themselves. I mean, some people might not have permission to do that,
and that's what I'm saying, some of the empathy needs to come in, where I'm like, not everybody can just decide like
but a lot of people just haven't given themselves permission to say something like that or do something like that.
Well, and think about the example that sets for his staff and his team, because I'm even just seeing as a those of us that are parents, when we tell ourselves, well, we don't have time for that, it's like, but I sure do hope my kids have healthy friendships. They're only going to see that if you model it a mirror, right? Like, so they need to, just the same principle we'd have for a marriage. Like, they need to see you go on dates as a couple. Like, they need to see you be in community, because that's the way they figure out how to be in community. Like, I love the boys when they interact with us and they're like, wait, oh, you've got your friends too, right? I want them to see that. And so I think you have to make time for that, even if it's just for the intent of teaching your kids something or leading in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I interrupted you. Did you have more you were saying on that first one?
No, I just, the time one is always like, because that is, I mean, anything, serving groups, it can always come up. And I'm like, there's just things that don't make sense. I don't know how we spend 8 hours a day on our phone, but don't have time. I don't know how the average Netflix series gets binged. I think it's like a day and a half now or something like that, And it's not like teenagers watching that. It's like 35-year-olds, the average watcher. So I just, we just have to like pause and be like, I'm currently not choosing to leverage this resource this way, my time this way, And you can say that. You can say, like, hey, I'm, but I think it's the reframing, to realize like you may absolutely be busy, but you have more autonomy and control in that than you probably think you do. To rearrange things and say no to things that are less important and so on. So
I like Mark Batterson. He says everything that has ever been accomplished in the history of the world is happened in a 24-hour time period. And everything that has ever been accomplished, like you think about wars and treaties and, Thomas Edison, like everything. So you probably have a couple hours for community group. But that's not empathetic either. So, What about past church hurt? Like people bringing in like, hey, I've been hurt by the church. Or like, I can't get one of those group things because.
I get it. I just want to be like, I get it. But like my analogy is always like, if I have one bad, food experience, so I swear off all Chinese food. If I have, I eat something bad, and it happens to be Chinese food, I never eat Chinese food again, or Italian food, or whatever it is. Like I'm like, I don't know. Like I do get it, I do understand it, and I don't think that it's healthy for us to say it's not going to happen, and that you won't have tension. But that's when you grow. That's like literally the point of all of it. Nothing happens without a little bit of push and a little bit of tension,
discomfort.
So, be uncomfortable for a second, and obviously, and be real about that hurt. Here's what I'm bringing in. Here's what I experienced from that last place that I was. And that includes not just community groups, so when you enter new workspaces and relationships and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And I know here at Northpoint specifically, like that's not going to happen here at Northpoint. Like those things will take place sometimes. But I also know that just the heart of staff and coaches and leaders, that if it's a hurt, like you can bring those things to people here at Northpoint. And we'd love to talk through those and figure those out together. And a little bit of the conversation you shared on Sunday of the lady who brought it to you as a pastor.
She's like, I know you guys aren't going to hurt me, and we will. Yes, we will. Yeah. We will hurt you.
What
we'll
about
mess up.
What about it's weird? Pushback. I don't want to do that. It's weird.
Does it mean it's like new? Like does weird mean like new?
Like the kumbaya weird?
It's unfamiliar to me. It's because I think that might be like what if I asked them to get more specific about what does weird mean.
You just got to hear their story. Because I would say we were Jill and I were meeting with I don't know a couple the other, and who I totally blank. Anyways, we were talking about like early 20 years ago. We were in a group and we used to all sing. It's called I Worship. And it was on a TV screen. The words would pop up, and it would show like things of like nature, like you're flying over water, and it's like, and I need you, Lord, and like 15 people are in a room singing this to a TV screen. And if I walked in that,
that's weird.
I'd go, that's weird. So I'd like to hear their story because I may just empathize with them and go, you're right. It is definitely weird. Church people do lots of weird stuff. So anyways, I would just want to hear their story. And then of course, try to normalize it. Cause it's like, knowing our community groups, knowing what happens in our small groups, men's groups, women's groups, all kinds of different groups. I just think it's much more authentic and real and vulnerable. And, it just share some of those stories and say, hey, would you be open to participate in something more like that?
Yeah. Yep. For sure. And that's why there's a lot of different groups like Starting Point and How Not to Read the Bible. That title in and of itself is great. How Not to Read the Bible.
Right, I love it.
Makes the assumption that we typically start with wrong impressions sometimes. So
I definitely want to start the I Worship group now.
I
remember those. Yes. And because I was a new Christian when those were kind of the thing, and it was hot. It was weird, and when. Yeah, it's not at all.
That was the rage of the church back then. Everybody's like, you've done I Worship to the TV?
Yes.
Yeah, I've done I Worship.
And you're singing God of Wonders while you're actually flying over the wonders.
Yeah,
yes,
it was like,
I see what they did there.
Yeah, you see it?
Yeah.
See, I think back then you'd be into that, Jeremy. You'd be like, I am actually singing right now. This is weird.
Yeah, well, Luckily, that was far before my time.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
yeah, I'm in my 20s, so I didn't experience that. What about just a group? A group doesn't gel. This is the last one. We're gonna wrap up with this one. Just like, man, I've tried that thing, just didn't work out. Just didn't gel.
This is the one that I feel like I hear the most often.
Yeah.
Just for me. So I don't know if this is, but two things that I've noticed. Like one, usually when the person is saying that, if I ask how often or consistently they've been, it is not often or consistent. Right. And so this group didn't gel. I mean, I know it met every week, and in the first semester I went once. And I'm just like, I don't know how to get clarity around that with you. Like, I mean, I want you to see that, like, you didn't show up. So it can't gel if you don't show up and you show up consistently.
Yeah.
The other dynamic that, it just didn't gel. It's just so-and-so's having a hard time really gelling and clicking. And it's like, so has he reached out to anybody? Like, just kind of the same principle of, like, I feel left out. Have you invited anybody anywhere? No one ever asked me to have coffee. Have you asked anybody to have coffee?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, I know that again, is awkward as adults.
Really a sense of ownership being in the group.
Yeah, take the first step. Now, if you've come to me and you tell me that, like, I have asked so-and-so in my group to get dinner 15 times, and they say no every time. Okay, maybe it isn't gelling. I mean, I do think there are times that it doesn't click. I do think also our expectations on gelling is off a little bit. Like, we expect the speed to have, like, I thought I'd have friends in 6 months. It took a little longer.
Yeah.
The other one I feel like I hear probably most often, most often is probably the people who don't come consistently and then say that. But the second most often would be, it's just not gelling or clicking. It's not doing it for us anymore. But when they first were there, it was like everything. It was like they were so pumped. And so I know that happened at one of the groups I was in, everybody was so excited. They were so thrilled. They couldn't say enough good things. And then about 3 months later, all of a sudden we started hearing, it's not gelling, it's not clicking from this one dynamic. And really they were hurt. And they couldn't name that. It felt easier to say it didn't click.
Yeah.
Then I just disagreed with, or I took a statement and I heard it a way that someone said in group, right? So I think if you're saying that to yourself, one, just be honest enough with yourself to say, am I actually consistently attending? And then, or am I actually labeling, I'm not choosing the right emoji.
Yeah.
Like, really, I'm hurt, but I'm using the not gelling emoji. I don't even know what that emoji would be.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, when you find that one, let me know. I'm
Yeah, what
curious
if
to know.
the things
I
aren't
don't know.
clicking or gelling?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah, that'd be interesting. I would also just add, be consistent. It's like in a dating relationship, I promise you're going to meet people and you're not going to gel. And then you go date somebody else. In whatever, any relational context, you're going to find that. That is just a natural part of relationships. And I would just give permission to say you may walk into some sort of small group connection and go like, these people are not my people. Like, I don't laugh at their jokes. They don't laugh at mine. And I only say that just because that's kind of my wiring. Like, I experience that sometimes. I'm like, oh, like, I just don't connect here. And it's not because they're bad people or I don't like them or anything. It just, there's a chemistry piece. And if so, then be consistent. So in a dating relationship, you don't write off all people I will never date again. In any other kind of relational context, that's not the most healthy or functional way to proceed. So it's the idea to go, okay, well, in a group, we didn't connect. Well, there's lots of groups. And so, kind of go see if there's another group that you can connect with. And I think that'd be a great maybe next step. But
yeah. I
just think be consistent.
And I'd normalize too. I've experienced on the other side of many people said, I got in this group and it was good. But then I got in this group and wow, that's really where, it's a normal part of people's story of like, it seems like there was a front door one and then there was more of a kitchen one. And that's okay. That's just a part of, beginning to learn different attachment styles and being known and all that stuff. So it was great. I appreciate you guys sharing some of your own context because I think you've all been on the other side of people getting in groups. You've all been in your own group environments. And that's really just our greatest hope for everybody watching and listening online right now is that they would take a step towards community right now. They would take a step towards being vulnerable and open, relearning some attachment styles, maybe discovering what God has for them and what it means to attach to people and be known in a way they haven't before, in hopes that really there's things that are healed and they grow in their walk with God and just in life and as a whole and as their family and all of that together. So I think we often have used this in the past where we say like, I can't afford to, like I can't spend the time, I can't spend the money, or I can't spend the energy in group. And we've said like, you can't afford not to. Like community and being known is so important. It's not about what you are known for, what you want to be known for. It's about being known by somebody, and you can't afford not to because it really is going to fill that hole, that piece in your life. And so we want that for everybody watching and listening. And so make sure to go to our website, mpaustin.com/what's next. and sign up for groups if you have not already. And then next week, if you're watching this in real time, we're going to be kicking off a brand new series called Heart to Heart, talking about the heart of God, the heart of God's to ours. And I think whether you are a follower of Jesus and have been one for a long time, or especially if you're brand new, and if you know a friend that maybe has had bad church experiences, I think this is an amazing series to invite someone to, because we're really going to get to the core of what is the heart of God like to our heart. And so I think it's going to be an incredible series. Really excited. So thank you guys for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.